Hi, live from the McCroskey Lounge. It's the Book of Hours podcast. Once again, we're coming to you on a Sunday, this time in the evening. Today we're talking about Washington, D.C. and the 500 children that have gone missing in the last 3 months.
Right. So 500 children have gone missing from D.C. From January of 2017 through March of 2017. I actually wrote a post about this on our page. But I felt that since the only media that seems to have covered this is something from Mic.com, MIC.com, which is a media source that I follow, and Real Progressives. Mm-hmm. And Real Progressives actually went to D.C. and demanded that the D.C. police start to investigate, like really put forth a serious investigation into what's going on with these missing children.
Right, because the DC police currently are saying there's no problem.
They're like, nothing to see
nothing
here,
to see
no
here,
problem.
move along.
500
Which is
children,
weird because, right, that's a big number.
In 3 months, 500 children in 90 days.
Actually, it's like 501, but who's counting?
Yeah,
right.
So, I mean...
Not the DC police.
That's a huge amount of children to just go missing
right.
over 90 days
right.
In such a small area. Washington, D.C. is not a big city. It's not New York City. I mean,
it's not even San Francisco.
For New York City, even if 500 children went missing in 3 months, that would be enough to
sure.
justify an investigation. And nobody seems to be doing anything about this. So, of course... my wheels are turning. I'm like, what's going on?
So
Why?
Yeah, exactly. So we've been talking about this, and Julie says, what was Betsy DeVos's brother? You know, was he connected with Blackwater? And I said, yeah.
Yeah. So why am I bringing up Betsy DeVos in the first place?
Right.
Okay, so
let's back up.
Let's go back. Betsy DeVos is basically... she's basically the spokesperson for the Christian Taliban, and what she wants to do is create charter schools.
Oh, and who is she?
Oh, and she's the brother of Eric.
No. What is her position?
Oh, she's the Secretary of Education.
Right. So, in case you didn't know that,
she's the Secretary of Education,
and she has ties to Amway. She's a billionaire.
Right. She's an oligarch that was installed. She paid her way into her position.
Basically.
You know, which apparently is the American way. But here's where the issue comes in, and how I tie her in with the children. So, when Betsy DeVos went around to the schools in Washington, D.C., she was met with some very, very vocal and very strongly worded protesting
and opposition
mm-hmm. against her presence in the Washington, D.C. Public school system. She was even... it was so forceful that she was, forced back into her car.
Right, she had trouble getting into her.
She had trouble getting in and out of her car. They want nothing to do with her.
Or her charter-ass schools.
Right. So what she wants to do is she wants to create charter schools. She wants to implement creationism into the schools. She wants to basically defund public schools altogether, take away science, take away critical thought. And she wants to put children in charter schools. And of course, every public school administration in the country is against this. We know the difference between, church and state. We keep it separate from our children's education. If you want to teach creationism at your church or at home, that's fine, but not in the school system.
Or go to a Christian school.
Right. Or go to a Christian school. So Betsy DeVos is... she basically wants to tear down the public school system, and she met her strongest opposition voice right there in Washington, D.C. So I believe that this is the
children missing.
The children missing, I believe, is a tactic, another psychological operative, another tactic to make people afraid to send their kids to school, thus bringing them home, leaving them at home so that they don't send them out to school.
So sending them out to school so they're exposed, and vulnerable to...
At the risk of getting kidnapped, because after all, 500 have gone missing in D.C. in just 3 months. This is a psychological operation, a manipulation tactic using scare tactics and fear to do this. And then she can come forward and say, well, then we may as well go forward with my program,
Right.
which will keep children safe. There's smaller classrooms in these charter schools. You can homeschool your kids. We'll give you money to homeschool your children, and all this stuff.
So
and
that's getting rid of public education.
getting rid of public
Okay.
education altogether. And I believe that this method, that these 500 children that have gone missing in DC in the last 9 months, is going to perpetuate that conversation in the media, in the school districts.
Well, the
parents.
media isn't even talking about it right now.
Right.
But I think ultimately this is a war on poverty. Okay, I mean not a war
Yeah.
on poverty. It's a war on the impoverished.
Right. It's
right? Because
victim blaming.
who how many people who hold down 3 jobs or 4 jobs at minimum wage can take time out to homeschool their children? Well, nobody.
Right.
The people who homeschool their children are people who have the ability to have one or the other parent at home to teach their children and to follow the criteria that you need to follow if you're homeschooling your children in order to meet certain criteria. And poor people can't do that.
Right.
Poor people
who
depend
work
on
3 jobs.
Right.
Exactly. They don't have
people.
time for that.
Poor people depend on public education.
Right.
You and I both went to public education, right?
We both.
I mean, I went to Catholic school from 1 to 8, but in high school I went to public high school, and honestly, I was more socialized in public education than I was in private.
Right.
That said, I mean, so it's a war on the impoverished,
Right.
Okay.
And so this is a tactic, again, that is going to scare the country into keeping their kids from going to public school, forcing people who are poor to either pay for a charter school or have to do homeschooling or whatever.
Right, and even
it's another burden
on them.
on the middle and the poorer
Yeah.
classes.
Oh, for sure.
So-
I mean, even though they're offering vouchers, those
vouchers
vouchers aren't going to cover enough.
Right.
You know.
So how does Eric Prince, Betsy DeVos's brother, tie into this malicious and malevolent and vicious attack on our children, on our most vulnerable? Well, think of what he's the founder of Blackwater.
Blackwater. So Blackwater is basically the 21st century version of the Pinkertons.
Right.
They are a private.
So people might not know who the
Okay,
Pinkertons
so
are.
Okay. Well,
Remember who we're
way
dealing
back
with
in the
here.
19th century. Okay, so Pinkertons were
Thugs.
private. Yeah, they were privately funded thugs.
Actual
basically.
thugs.
Yeah, and they were
Yeah.
and they were detectives in other words, but they broke up unions, strikes, and things like that. So currently, Blackwater, they were used in the Iraq War, the more recent Iraq War from 15 years ago.
So they have human rights violations for abuses in Iraq.
In Iraq, because they basically went around Iraq and they
were bullies and
they
thugs.
were bullies and thugs, and they killed people with impunity.
Right, just
Just
massive.
yeah.
They also have human rights violations for Hurricane Katrina,
Right.
which is New Orleans.
So they were here on our own soil, and they were doing the same kinds of tactics in New Orleans during the flood.
Hurricane Katrina.
And they were going after once again they were
The
going
poor,
after the poor,
Black
minorities,
communities,
the people who couldn't
minorities.
leave, the people who
And
could not leave
The
the
500
city.
children that are missing are 500 minority children.
Right, so black and
So-
brown kids. And here's the deal. Somebody asked Julie, well, maybe it's part of this Washington D.C. porn ring. Well, we hate to say it, but there's
I
even
don't-
racism in child porn.
Yeah.
Okay, they like white kids,
Yeah.
and so we both feel that
little children generate a larger audience
Sure,
and
sure,
more money.
sure.
That's a terrible thing to say. Like the whole thing is dirty.
The whole thing's
like
fucked
the whole
up.
thing. It just. I feel like
We need
I
to
feel
take a shower after we do this.
disgusted
Yeah.
with all of it. Like,
Right.
why isn't the media covering the fact that these 500 minority, mostly girls, have gone missing? Why do we immediately want to just assume that it's this, underground? I'm not sure I believe in the whole underground porn, child porn thing.
well, the
in
Pizzagate
DC.
kind of Pizzagate sort of feeds into that, but I don't know.
I don't know if I
Yeah.
actually believe that.
Right.
But what I do know, and what I know as fact, is that Betsy DeVos was intimidated by and pushed back by minority families who said, no, 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 you're not coming into our schools, and you're not teaching creationism, and you're not turning our public schools into charter schools. No, no, no. And they pushed back, and they were very strong against her. Now, that's a fact. And what I also know that's a fact is that her brother is the founder of Blackwater, which is basically, they're the thugs. I mean,
Right. They're hired goons.
They're hired goons.
Right.
Massive human rights violations just swirl around them constantly, and they targeted Latin and Black communities in New Orleans during Hurricane Katrina. And to be honest with you, this missing 500, this story, this missing 500 children, feels a lot like what happened in the Boko Haram. It feels like all of a sudden people woke up and their children were missing.
Right.
This has only taken 90 days for 500 children to go missing. This is a shock to our community, a shock to our country. We really need to pay attention to this.
And let me make another just sort of go back to our podcast about Eclipsed. In Liberia and in other countries in Africa, and like Boko Haram, they kidnap children. The boys become soldiers. The girls become sex slaves. Okay, and we don't have that yet, but this could be the beginning. If a civil war does break out, and if Blackwater is part of the government's secret agents and death squads and things like that. I know I'm going out on a limb here, folks.
No, actually,
I really feel like,
because
but
the division and the fracturing in our country is
Right.
still setting the pace for a civil war.
Exactly.
So this actually makes sense.
Yeah.
More sense.
Okay, so you may think we're wearing tinfoil hats, but we are just like following an idea and following.
And we're
a
also
concept.
basing it on what we know that other countries have experienced.
Right, and so Blackwater is a group of thugs. They are not lawful. They're not a lawful organization in the least, and so they would take on those same kinds of tactics
Right.
if they had the opportunity. Right. And I would not put it past them to be behind the disappearance of these children.
Of these 500 children, sort of as a look, this is your warning.
Right.
This is your punishment for pushing back against my sister who
Right.
wants to teach your children creationism and basically Christian Talibanism.
Right.
And who knows, these children are probably being brainwashed right now as we speak.
Mm-hmm.
And so my message to the families of the children that have gone missing is, think about that. Think about that for a minute before you allow the police to just walk all over you and tell you, somebody probably ran away, they were unhappy at home. No. 500 children missing in 90 days. That's a little army that they're about ready to brainwash, and
Right.
and the children are probably going to all return and say things like, or most of them will return and they might say things like, yeah, I want to go to a charter school now. Yeah, I want to be indoctrinated into the Christian Taliban type of imaginary magical thinking curriculum and all that. So maybe they're brainwashing them right now, and that's what's scary is because if they're going to get away with it in Washington, D.C., then they're going to start to target poorer communities like New Orleans, like Detroit, like, some of the other poorer communities throughout our country. Mm-hmm. And we might actually see more of this.
Right, so they're using our children against us in terms of like holding them hostage.
They might.
Yeah.
They might. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's really all we have to say about that.
And so happy Sunday. But on a lighter note, I'm JP Collins.
And I'm Julie.
And this is the Book of Hours podcast. You can support us by going to our website, book-of-hours.com, and look for the donate button. Anything else to say?
No, that's it.
Okay, well, have a great week, everybody. We'll be talking to you again soon, and thank you for watching.
Thanks.
Trolls
Bye-bye.
will be ignored.
Bye.
Bye-bye.